This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.
Hello, I am Dr. Lou Fraze, and I am here along with two very nice ladies to my left, and we will be talking about advance directives and how important they are to all of us to help us maintain comfort at the time we pass on from this world to the next. I'd like to introduce to you, first of all, Julie O'Brien. Julie is a very wonderful lady who is an interpreter for the deaf. She has a family that has deafness, with her mother and father both being deaf, and is very skilled at doing the signing and has been doing this for the City Council. Also, I have Jennifer Owen, who is the director of the ADRC, which is an organization which is there to help us to achieve the goal of having advance directives in every household and for every person. So I'd like to welcome you both to this presentation, and we are going to act as, the three of us will act as one, trying to help convince you that this is a valuable thing for you to be doing. We can start with Julie, who has just gone through a death of her father, and the story is quite unique. Are you prepared to talk about that story now?
About 3 years ago, my father, who is deaf, his means of communication, he lives in Duluth, and of course I'm here in Eau Claire, and he would fax me. And he had faxed that there was some blood in the urine. And it was about 11:30 at night when I saw this fax, because I was at a neighbor's, and it concerned me. And I went to bed because I thought 11:30, I knowing my dad, he was in bed. So, but about 3 o'clock, I got in my car and drove up to Duluth, and we took him into the emergency room. And it turned out that he had kidney cancer, and it was quite invasive. And Duluth could not do anything, nor could the Eau Claire Mayo. We had to go to Rochester, and after they operated everything else, they said he maybe had 3 months or so. My father lived quite a bit longer than that, but my dad did do his advance directive, and I can say it made it easier for me as his daughter. I got to see him go through this whole process with so much respect and dignity. His final wishes were that he die in the same room he was born in, and he was able to do that. We did hospice towards the end, and it was very beautiful to be a part of it and to follow his wishes. When he took his last breath, it was beautiful and peaceful, and I felt very privileged. That advance directive, I think, is critical. We all want to put it off because we think it's never going to come, but I've done mine, and my children, all four, know what my wishes are and are very willing to follow it through after seeing how I went through with my father's, and knowing that I grieve for him that he's gone and miss him, but I also find joy that I was able to be with him in that final moments. So I find it so important.
If I may ask you to review the story of his final weeks when he called you and said, "We have a harvest to do."
My father has a huge garden, and this would be 3 weeks prior to, and I had been at my dad's house about a month, and I had been at the home. It was 1 week up there, 1 week back here, and I had just gotten back home, and then my dad faxed, "Got to come back, it's time for the onions to be harvested." So I drove back up there, and my father sat on a stool and tried to dig as much as he could, and I'm digging. We had 1,600 onions. And of course you lay them all out, then you take and bunch them and then hang them. And then of course we had to start digging up the potatoes, 26 bushels worth. And then was the beets, and 54 quarts we did. And my dad's comment after we were done, he said, "It's time for me and the garden to go to sleep." And that to him was very important, even though he laughed at me because I tried to use his tiller out there and I could not till the garden. It made him laugh quite hard, but it was beautiful.
once the harvest was in, then he lived for another
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful story. For her father at age 83 knew the time was coming, was ready for it, and made it absolutely as peaceful and as wonderful for himself and the family as it could be. And that's the goal of those of us who work in palliative care and hospice care, to enable the individual to choose to have this kind of an ending, rather than an ending which they may not choose when they simply do not have an advance directive and nobody knows what they want done. So this is a critically important thing that will enable you as the individual to decide how you want to do this. And nobody can do this for you. You have to do this for yourself. Now, I want to go back and just say that this show is being created in memory of Bob Dawson, because Sheriff Bob and I did the Happy Trails Health Show for years, and Bob is now gone, so I'm left alone, but this is in his memory. Sheriff Bob developed pancreatic cancer August of 2014 and died in October. Very short lifespan. He elected very early to adopt his advance directive, and indicated in that advance directive that he did not want anything done at the end of his life, prolong that life. He accepted that, and because he did, he was able to be on hospice at the end of his life. On October 20th, died in his home very peacefully. It was a beautiful ending. The point about that is that we can choose that, or we could not choose that and wind up in somebody else's hands making decisions that will prolong unnecessary suffering, and the key there is unnecessary, which just creates a great deal of difficulty, both physical and emotional, for the individual and the family. So that's what we're all about. Jennifer is here from the Agency for Aging and Disability Resources. This is I shouldn't say anything more. I should just have Jennifer tell us what ADRC is and what it can do for us in this setting of developing advance directives that you out there can fill out.
Sure, thank you. The Aging and Disability Resource Center of Eau Claire County, our mission is to be an agency where people can come and receive information regarding benefits and services available to those that are older or adults that are living with disabilities, but also their caregivers and families. Advance directives is just one of the many things that we feel we can help educate people on in order to plan for your future care needs. We feel it's very important and vital to take the time to plan for your future and your care needs as they may occur in the future. And it's very important to do that when you're not in the midst of the situation, to do it prior to actually needing to enact that document, be it an advance directive. We offer several presentations called Owning Your Future, Planning Ahead for Care Needs. It's an hour-and-a-half long presentation, and we encourage anybody in the community that is interested in learning more about the different resources available, including advance directives, to come to those presentations. We also offer the documents right in our office, and we have a helpful do-it-yourself packet, and we can also talk with consumers about the advance directives.
So the ADRC is in the courthouse, and easy to find, well marked by signage. So you can go down there and pick that up. Now, Jennifer, is it possible that if I couldn't get out of my home that you would send me an advance directive through the mail?
We could send it through the mail, and if you also wanted to meet with a staff member of the Aging and Disability Resource Center, we do meet with people in the community, be it in their home, the hospital, the nursing home, wherever the people are, we will go to them if they're unable to come down to the courthouse.
Wonderful. And the best point of this ADRC is that they will help you do this. You need no other help. You don't need help from the healthcare system. You don't need help from attorneys. And the process can be easy and actually fun because you meet new people. Their caregivers that they have that help you fill this out are very bright, most of them young, and wonderful people. So it is an answer to where do I go to get the advance directive.
And is there a charge, Jennifer?
There is no charge for our services.
No charge. Did you all hear that? That's amazing, and very wonderful for those of us who need to do this at low cost and to finally get it done. So I would encourage you to get to know the ADRC and use them as a resource for this. If you don't do that, if you end up in a healthcare system, they will help you do it as well. But they may have different forms, different ways of doing it. And in reality, the state of Wisconsin in 1994 passed a law that set up for the durable power of attorney for health care. This law created the document that Jennifer and her company will provide. There are a number of other documents out there because people outside of the state, outside of the legislature, have opted to develop their own forms for multiple different reasons. They want to add or subtract things that they think are either unnecessary or cumbersome. But the durable power of attorney for health care is the law. It is the only one that you need. You do need 2 witnesses, and if you happen to go through the ADRC, they will provide those 2 witnesses. You don't need to have a notary public. You don't need to have an attorney. And as Jennifer pointed out, it is at no cost to you. So for me, it's the ideal option for getting your advance directives filled out. If you have other questions, for example, about the medical aspects, then your health care provider can be of benefit there. At any time, you need to sit down with your family and you need to talk about this eyeball to eyeball, if I may, with your loved ones so that everybody is on the same page with this. One of the most notorious things that we deal with in helping families set up advance directives is what I would call the squabbling between the children. When one person thinks this is good, one person thinks it's not good, and that leaves the individual, you, not knowing quite what to do, and in most cases people will opt to do nothing. It merely impedes the development of the advance directive. And I can't emphasize enough that this is your document. It is not a document for anybody else but you. The other very important point is that when you go into a hospital, the commitment of our hospitals is to save your life. There is no acknowledgement to allowing you to die, because that would not be in keeping with the mission of the healthcare system. The problem with that is it again may take the prerogative away from you to make the decisions. You may wind up in intensive care units on machines when you didn't really want to be, and you're at a point where you can no longer verbalize that to loved ones or to your providers. So everybody is standing around the bedside in the intensive care unit wondering, what is it that you wanted? And the way to avoid that situation, which is extremely common, is to fill out an advance directive that says, when I am there, this is what I want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And only you can make those decisions, not your healthcare system or your family. You have to commit to doing that. It is so important to have this done before you get to the point where you need that service. So in reality, an advance directive is not something just for old people. It is for all of us at any stage of life, because any one of us at any time could wind up in that terminal setting. For example, the gentleman out riding a bike who gets struck and has head trauma, winds up in coma in the intensive care unit and has no advance directive, and everybody's wondering what to do. The individual who has a stroke and is unable to speak for him or herself, and strokes occur at all ages of life, again, without an advance directive, leaves the healthcare system in a quandary as to where to go and what to do. And as I pointed out, given the mission of the healthcare system to keep you alive until the last possible moment, that is what will be done unless you've specified in advance what you want. And given that setting where you are in a coma and nobody understands what it is that you wanted, we can keep you alive forever. There was a case of a young lady probably 15 years ago who was at a party and for medical reasons passed out and went into coma. Her name was Terry Chavo. Some of you may remember the name. She was brought into an intensive care unit, placed on a ventilator and tubes, and then there was a huge squabble between her husband, who is the legal next of kin and makes the decisions, and her mother and father. They both had differing feelings about what should be done. Her husband said that Terry told him that if she were in coma, she never wanted to be kept alive with tubes. The mother and father, on the other hand, felt that there was still evidence of life. Her heart was beating, she was breathing, and they wanted her kept alive. That scenario went on for 10 years before it finally went to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court said they accepted what her husband said, and they enabled the caregivers to discontinue all the tubes. She died peacefully about 10 days later. The precedent that was set by that is that the Supreme Court has said that only the individual can make this decision for themselves, and if they have even told a loved one about it, that will satisfy the requirement for an advance directive. Of importance in that particular case is by the time Terry died, the CT scan of her brain showed absolutely no brain activity, no brain tissue. And it's quite a remarkable CT scan. But she was kept alive when it was obviously her death was inevitable. But the legal manifestations between the husband and the mother and father kept this going for a long time. Eliminate that with your advance directive. Anything else I should add to that? Do you?
I would just add one other comment that relates to that on not quite as grand of a scale, but having advance directives is really a protection for you, but also for your family. If you don't have that document, the need to involve attorneys to put legal guardianships in place could occur, and there is a relatively significant expense in doing that. And so another reason why they are so important is to hopefully alleviate that expense for yourself and your family if the event were to occur that you became incapacitated.
Thank you. Very well done.
And I think the advance directive is a document that I have control over about what decisions are going to be made about my end of life. But also it's a gift to my family, that they know that this is Mom's wishes and we're going to honor it, and Mom can die with the dignity and respect that she deserves. And I think that's the beautiful part of an advance directive too.
One other area that is of importance to all of us is what is the clergy's response to advance directives or organized religion. And I have taken a considerable amount of time to study that issue. And discontinuing medical procedures that are burdensome, dangerous, extraordinary, or disproportionate to the expected outcome can be legitimate. Let me re-emphasize, can be legitimate. That is the refusal of overzealous treatment. Here one does not will to cause death. One's inability to impede it is merely accepted. That statement actually comes from the Wisconsin Catholic bishops and is accepted by all major religions. Prolongation of the dying process is unnecessary. Is the ultimate statement coming from that. You can discuss this with your pastor to further allay whatever concerns you have about the religious aspects, given that we have a very powerful right to life philosophy. And I believe that's appropriate to have that right to life philosophy, but that it should not be used for overzealous treatment we can in fact accept the fact that we cannot impede death coming. Of interest is that has led to a new movement to replace the no CPR bracelet with an allow natural death bracelet. And if you think about it, no CPR is significantly different than allow natural death. For those of us who are approaching the end of life and don't wish to have CPR specifically, we can now say allow natural death, which puts it in a whole new light. Going to the life-sustaining measures, we're talking about CPR, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. We're talking about ventilators, the respirator machine. We're talking about intravenous feedings. We're talking about tube feedings, either tubes inserted into the mouth or nose or directly through the stomach wall, all of which will, in fact, allow us to save lives. But when used in futile cases is something that you have to decide whether you want, and I think most of us would decide not to have those things done. Examples of futile conditions: when and if we have terminal cancer, end-stage lung disease, emphysema particularly, end-stage congestive heart failure, dementia, other neurologic conditions including stroke and trauma, and any chronic disease where suffering overtakes pleasure. At those points, we want to start palliative care. Palliative care is a newly defined entity that is out there along with hospice care. I think most are familiar with hospice care, where we say life is going to end and we're going to direct our efforts toward comfort, not cure. A lot of people are uncomfortable with taking away the cure. There is now a new way of dealing with this that's called palliative care. Palliative means comfort. When you enlist palliative care, you're not ending treatment. Treatment can be done at the same time as palliative care. So the two go together. One of the issues with hospice care that we've noted is that people tend to sign up for hospice too late. They don't want to admit that they're dying, and they wait and wait and wait. And I think the average time between when somebody signs up for hospice care and death is a couple weeks. In order for hospice care and palliative care to be useful to you and your family, the earlier you sign up for it, the better. And the addition of palliative care to this armamentarium is a useful tool to bridge the gap between allowing treatment and finally discontinuing treatment. Now, one final thing that I wanted to do was to read to you, this is from a book called The Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living. It is written by an internist, Dr. Amit Sood, and what he says about death is just so beautiful that I wanted to read it because I think it can act as a good summary for what we're talking about. Death, particularly the uncertainty in it, is one of the primary fears most people have. Life feels like a drive with no idea how much gas is left. The possibility of dying carries an intensely negative meaning, particularly when you're not ready for it. Death can be perceived in many different ways. A more holistic approach might help. I see death as an act of compassion, a way to decrease the burden of our suffering. A baby growing in the comfort of the womb has to endure the uncertainty and stress of being born. Birth is a stressful but necessary change. The baby can't stay in the womb beyond the stipulated time without suffering. Maybe death arrives at the perfect time too. Staying longer might invite greater suffering. The baby dies in the womb to be born in the world. Every exit is an entrance. Death can be viewed as a sparkler burning out or as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. The former ends our presence while the latter is transformative. I will share what I believe and have found comforting when talking heart to heart with patients whose lives are coming to a close and with their caregivers. Like birth, death may be an entrance, an adventure into worlds that our minds and science cannot fathom. Death is a journey we must take to complete our life's meaning. Death is a comma, not the last period in our story. The enigma lies in what lines or chapters will follow that coming. Curiosity about what will follow, rather than fear, ferries us toward peace. Let me repeat that. Curiosity about what will follow, rather than fear, ferries us towards our peace. And I must say that all of my life I have been looking forward to death so that I can finally find out what the answers are. And I've said this for 35 years to my colleagues. I just don't want it to come too soon. So I'm ready. Anything to add?
I just would like to thank everyone for watching and would encourage you to utilize the Aging and Disability Resource Center if you do have questions or would like some guidance with your advanced directives.
Jennifer is so thoughtful, and that's the way the ADRC is set up, so take advantage.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.